Warm greetings on behalf of W4W Foundation, a think tank built as Citizens Collective. We welcome you to today's special session on breaking barriers, conversation with male advocates for gender equality. This is a continuation of signature series Wednesdays for Water, Friday Waters, Monday Munching and Musing with Women for Water, where we invite our previous speakers to hold discussions on subjects that they are concerned about and are curating them in their pedagogy as well as profession. The special session today is basically now a new season for us, so we are super excited about it, and we are already inviting our speakers to hold special sessions with us on serious matters which they think should reach to more and more people. Do keep following us at www.w4w.in for regular updates. My name is Mansibal Bhargav, and I'm the host from W4W. And with me today, we have Professor Anamika Barwa from IIT Guwahati as a co-moderator. Today, the discussion is on breaking barriers, conversation with male advocates for gender equality, as I said. And we like to explore, describe, and explain through examples the roles and responsibilities of men in engendering the society in all spheres, from home to work to business to government. And especially here, we may focus on water endeavors by them and their counterparts. Let me now invite Anamika for an opening remark on this idea of hosting this session, because this was ideated by her. And also she may start the conversation. Thank you, Anamika, for joining us and also curating the whole session. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mansi. And thank you to the Water for Women Forum for hosting this very, very important and a special session. So the question here is that why this special session on which focuses on male champions, and why we think that male champions can play a crucial role in advancing gender equality. So before we get into the conversation, I thought let me just very quickly give a flavor to the listeners that what is there in our mind. So if you see the focus on male champion on advancing gender equality, it basically stems from a very important, and a significant point. And that is that I'm sure many of you here would agree with me that men often occupy influential positions. So their advocacy for gender equality from positions of power and leadership can actually have a profound impact. So by actively challenging the traditional gender norms and the stereotypes, male champions can play a very important role in shifting societal perceptions about gender roles and capabilities, and which can then lead to more inclusive and equitable environment. When we talk about gender equality, it should not be that the onus is only on the women and women empowerment. It's not gender anymore then. So it means that both gender needs to work together. And I and Mansi, we felt that this session can be something which can also inspire other men and boys, where they can also support the cause of gender equality, because it's important for us to understand that gender equality is not only beneficial for the society, but it is also essential for creating a just and a prosperous society. So recognizing the importance of their role, we have therefore organized this special session. As far as Mansi's and my information goes, it's the first of its kind. And we have brought together 4 remarkable men who has been, dedicating a lot of their time and effort in their work at the personal space to create a more equal world. Having said that, we are not saying that we have only 4 men who are male champion. We are sure, many across the country in different nooks and corners who are actually helping us in advancing this very important cause. But we thought that let us start this conversation with having these 4 men today, because we aim to amplify the impact of male champions in advancing gender equality and creating a positive societal change through our conversation with them today. So thank you for joining us, and over to you now, Mansi.
Thanks, Anamika. Thank you so much. So today, as Anamika mentioned, we have some really, I will say, our supporters as well as mentors who have been working on this field. So I'm now pleased to welcome Professor Anjal Prakash, who is Clinical Associate Professor, Research and Research Director at the Bharati Institute of Public Policy, Indian School of Business in Hyderabad, and Professor Vishal Narayan from Management Development Institute, Gurgaon, as first round of panelists. And of course, we are going to then have joint discussions as well. I'm also pleased to welcome Dr. Sanjay Singh, the waterman of Bundelkhand and Secretary at the Parmarth Samaj Sevi Sansthan at Jalaun, Uttar Pradesh, and Chandrasekhar Jairaman from Watson and Biotech as panelists for the second round of questions. And as I mentioned, towards the end, we will bring all the conversations together. So Anamika, please go ahead with the first round of questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mansi. Okay, so Anjal and Vishal, thank you very much for joining. My first question is actually to both of you, and I would like to start with one question which I would like both of you to respond to. And the question is very simple, because what we really want to know that what do you think about gender equality? Why do you think it is important? And what role you think you have played personally so far in this effort of bringing gender equality? So maybe Anjal and then Vishal.
Let me first, at the outset, tell all of you and the listeners, as well as people who are watching us, that it's been one of the most innovative session that I have ever thought of, because I never thought that Anamika, you'll put us all together and speak about gender equality, because we have been working. All of us have been working in different areas. Some of us have collaborated with each other on gender issues, but never ever we have come together to speak about this. So something which is very nice. And thank you so much for curating this session for us. Let me just, focus on 5 points why I think gender equality is very crucial. The first is definitely about social justice argument that, it's very crucial for ensuring fairness and justice in the society. And we need, each one of us need to promote equal opportunities and rights for individuals, regardless of the gender identity or other social identity that we have. So it's a social justice point. The second is what we have seen that over the years, the economic empowerment issues are also becoming very prominent. And if so for 50% of our population is lacking behind in terms of opportunities, which is access to education, employment, resources, or anything that helps in building a strong economy for a nation. That is the argument. So that we need to have gender equality and other social inclusion issues that is there. So the second point is about economic environment. The third is about diversity and innovation. I think gender equality fosters a diversity of perspective and experiences, and it's essential for creativity, innovation, problem solving that we all have been grappling with. And embracing diverse voices leads to better decision-making process and also very effective solutions. And that has personally seen, and I think this is a point that has to come forward. The fourth point is about human rights. I think it's a basic, gender equality is a fundamental human right that every individual deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, and it's free from discrimination and any oppression based on gender stereotypes and norms that we have. The last point, I would say, it's a personal responsibility. I think each one of us have to take this as a personal, quest in which we will be understanding how, providing a challenging stereotype, encouraging inclusive dialogues, and aiming to contribute to a more equitable and just society. This is very, very personal to me, and these are the points I would put forward. Over to you, Namika.
Thank you. Very, very important point, Anjal. And I so much agree with the most important point that you mentioned, that when a large section of our population doesn't really have access, for example, to the labor market, and we talk about economic growth, I think we are, of course, as a country also losing out a lot of it. And of course, all the other points, including the human rights issue, absolutely. Over to you now, Vishal. Where would you like to chip in, and what do you think are the most important points?
Yeah. So I think there are two parts to your question. One is, why do I think that gender equality is important, and how do I see my role in this, right? So I think, so first of all, again, compliments for having put together an all-male panel to talk about gender. So I've often been on such panels, but usually I'm the only man, and then I'm the only man talking on gender with three other women. And I have started wondering that, how are these women going to respond to a man talking about gender? Are they going to say that he's talking about gender from a man's point of view, right? So first of all, it's very nice to see, an all-male panel talking about gender. So compliments to Mansi and to Anamika for that. So Anjal has very nicely put forward all the academic arguments about gender equality. But let me just start with a personal anecdote. So many years ago, when my son was in class 2, he came to me and said, "Papa, I'm a feminist," and I was quite alarmed. I said, what's happened to you? This is the language I talk. Yeah, so he
Right.
said, no, whenever there is a fight in our class between the boys and the girls, and when the boys don't allow the girls to play badminton, I step in. I said, no, they should also be allowed to play badminton. And then I hand over the rackets to them, and then I say, let the girls play badminton. Yeah, so I think that if a child of that age has this, can have this way of thinking that all men and women, all boys and girls deserve an equal opportunity. So girls have the privilege of playing badminton as much as boys. So I think it's quite logical that mature adults should advocate for gender equality. So I think um, advocating for any form of equality is very basic to being human. So if you're a good human being, you would want an equal society. So I think so. So for me, that's the basic point that it's intrinsic to being a good human being that you would want equality of different genders, of different kinds of social identities. So I think that is one. Regarding my role, so I think as an academic, I come in basically with a focus on research with a focus on gender in my research and teaching and training and capacity building. And let me start by saying that, I never started off, I've had this discussion with Mansi also once before, that I never started off as a gender person, right? So I never started off with an aspiration to be a gender specialist. But in my work on water, I found that, gender was so basic to all aspects of water governance, access, distribution, and control that you couldn't really think about water or write about water without taking a gendered lens. So whether we talk about decision making, whether we talk about access, distribution, governance. So men and women always have a different relationship with water. So I think that was for me the starting point. And what I really enjoy in my work is teaching on gender. So for many years, I taught a course on gender rights and equity in water management at the Terry School of Advanced Studies. And what I really personally get a kick out of is teaching gender to students with a non-social science background. So teaching gender to engineers, yeah, because it's a very big paradigmatic departure from them, yeah. And I think that really has a snowballing effect because when you concentrate on your own work, you are the one who's producing change. But if you can train a generation of students to think about societal issues and governance and institutions and gender in looking at water, then it has a snowballing effect. It has a cascading effect because you're training, the future breed of water professionals. So I think that is one. But the Terry School of Advanced Studies did a number of training and capacity building programs where we brought in a perspective on gender rights and equity to male engineers in the water bureaucracy. And I think that was a very important thing to do, a very challenging thing to do, because conventionally, that's not how engineers are trained to look at water provisioning. So that was one. I'm also keen to produce a body of knowledge that looks at gender and water in a South Asian context. Yeah, so all are thinking about governance, about gender, about political ecology, feminist political ecology, is really informed by Western approaches. And I wonder whether it's possible to develop a body of knowledge on gender and water that's very grounded to the context of the global South or the context of South Asia. Yeah. And also in my consulting, provided knowledge support to a number of organizations, of course, the Saki Waters, the Asia Foundation, to bring a gender perspective. I've been training Sava Fellows as part of the Sava Fellows program of Saki Waters funded by IDRC, provided support to the Asia Foundation in one of their projects on transboundary water governance to bring in a gender perspective. And also now as an advisor of the Wiki Water Resources Council, providing support in making the contribution of women in the water sector more visible and documenting some of the initiatives that are happening on the ground. So I will stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vishal. And I think, yes, it is a very interesting panel, as you started off saying all-man panel, which is usually not acceptable. But I think here the cause is so important. And this was purposely done because we really wanted to bring men together. But before I hand it over to Mansi, I think one very important thing is the points that you make are so important. And I can also tell you that It's not about sometimes what my experience tell me is not about sometimes about how much one is aware about gender equality, whether you are a man or a woman. I have actually found many men, for example, you, Vishal, Sanjay ji, and Andrew Chandrasekhar, who are probably much more gender aware and gender conscious than many women I have met. So I think it's about the thought, the idea, the understanding of the concept. And that's exactly what we are today going to talk about. So thank you for your very, very interesting point, Vishal. Mansi, I'm going to hand it over to you for the second round now.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Namika, and thanks, Anjal and Vishal, to really set the tone for what discussion is coming up further. So let me invite Chandra first and then Sanjay ji to have a continuous discussion on the same question what Anamika asked, but following up with because you are really working hands-on with a large number of women on a daily basis. So please add a couple of questions with what Anamika has asked Anjal and Vishal. And the questions are, how did you really, decide, or what drove you or inspired you to work with women workforce? And if you could please explain your nature of engagement with them on a regular basis, because I know both of you are in the water sector. So let me start with Chandra first. Yeah.
So I am a heritage enthusiast as well. If you are a true Indian and a Bharatiya, talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat and other things, nothing comes out of our mind other than the very verse. Gangesha Yamune Seva Godavari Saraswati Narmade Sindhu Kaveri Jalasmin Sannidhim Guru. It means all the women are embodied into the nature. And every water you talk about are named after women. So it shows where fertility is there, where growth is there, where there is some proliferation is there. We talk about Nari Shakti and Shakti, and we in fact embody them as God, goddesses, and pray them and worship them through Navaratri and things like that. So the basic thing, if you are truly imbibed with the Indian culture and the richness of this heritage, we should happily bring women as part of our life in every aspect, be it personal or be it professional. For me, luckily, I was born with three elder sisters, my mother, everybody, all are role models in their own right. My mother, without having a single penny in her hand, she used to feed as much as possible all the guests who are coming in without even taking any money as a loan with one father's salary. All my sisters were all trailblazers, one being the first engineering graduate from my district in a small hamlet on merit, and she just joined without getting into this quota problems, all the political issues. My second sister was a trailblazer again. She was in the bank, then she got bored with the boredom of the monotony of the work. Then she became the first tally dealer. Then she became the first homegrown leader. Now she is leading a company as a founder with 2,000 employees, all from BPL families, all with women background, who are from rural areas, who have graduated and they have been brought into Bombay. They are running the largest financial company, both hardware and software, made for the rural banks. Again, touching the lives of the last woman and the last man. So we all have a societal blend, or we have a societal bonding inherently coming in and out. And maybe I'm coming from a land of Meenakshi, Madurai. So I still have more reinforcement in my blood, body, soul that women play an important role. More importantly, when I ventured into water, I found out that the women in the last mile is suffering a lot. Be it carrying the water from miles together, in spite of she may be having periods, she may be anemic, she may not have had her breakfast. She is the one who goes all the way to fetch the water and come back. Again, you see the girl child will be running behind her to help her mother, mom, and come out. It is psychologically blend. They have the responsibility. So I call them jocularly as the home minister or the finance minister, be it or the health minister. If the son or a daughter falls sick, the mother immediately runs around, irrespective of whether she has money or not, goes to the nearby doctor, be it a quack or a qualified doctor, to make somehow this child comfortable. So in every part of life, if you take water and water enabling issues, like diseases born out of water, you want to remediate water, it is the mother or the woman who stands first and does this. Then now tell me, how can I differentiate or divide me out of water and women in a context? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chandra. We'll come back to your endeavors also in the second round of questions. So, Sanjay ji, waterman of Bundelkhand. I'm really curious to understand how did you get into friendly with the Jal Sahelis? Over to you, Sanjay ji.
Thank you, Mansi, and all of you, all the panel. Uh, First of all, thank you very much. You have arranged very good talk about the gender. Gender is not a subject. This is a attitudes. So basically, first of all, or water is the very crucial subject for women. So I have give a example for in Bundelkhand. So Anjalji is also in previously working with me, and Chandra is also providing the filter in my area. But attitudinal problem कि natural resource management in entire the country, also in the out of country, mostly people is like to कि this is the basically the right of men and women. Basically the man is also focusing of I have a give a example. Man is focusing of water for irrigation, or women focusing for drinking water, both the priorities. So the basic the paradigm is the different. So basically every time is men are not feeling कि how to women has fetching water, how to time consume this collecting the water. Water is a women are fetching water in overall in personal use, domestic use. They have in every day has a they will collect water. In my journey start in 2011 when Bundelkhand is suffering as a drought, a severe drought. So Mansi and all of you. So I am in go to in one village. So I have been seen that one lady is very in crying. So I'm meet to and ask why the reason you are. So उसने मुझे बहुत ही अच्छे से बताया, और उन्होंने जो मुझे बताया वो बहुत ही इम्पोर्टेंट बात थी, क्योंकि मैं उनकी बात को हिंदी में रखूंगा। तो उन्होंने कहा कि पानी है नहीं, और पानी है नहीं, और पानी ना होने के कारण हम गए थे पानी भरने के लिए और हमें देर हो गई। अब वो देर हो गई, देर होने के बाद में हम आए तो घर में पति और घर के लोग हमें गाली गलौज कर रहे हैं, मारपीट कर रहे हैं। पानी नहीं है, इसमें हमारी गलती कहाँ है? ये बात मेरे मन में उस दिन इतनी गहरी कर गई कि निश्चित तौर से ये जो कह रही हैं बिल्कुल सही कह रही हैं। और मैंने उनसे पूछा कि क्या, तो उन्होंने ही मुझे ये समझाने की कोशिश की कि हैंडपंप कहाँ लगेगा पुरुष तय करेंगे, कुआं कहाँ बनेगा पुरुष तय करेंगे, टंकी कहाँ लगेगी पुरुष तय करेंगे, और फिर जरूरत पानी की किसकी है सबसे पहले? पहले आंखें खोलने के से लेके आंखें बंद करने तक पूरी जरूरत पानी की महिलाओं को है। आखिरकार उनसे कोई पूछने वाला नहीं है, ना उनका कहीं पे निर्णय है, और फिर इसके बाद में भी सारे के सारे जो प्रेशर हैं वो हमारे ऊपर आते हैं। और तो मैंने कहा आप तो बात तो बिल्कुल सही। हमने कहा होना कैसे चाहिए? तो उन्होंने कहा कि वो बहुत अभी भी हमारी सीखर पहली जल सहेली हैं, और वो बहुत अच्छे से समझाती हैं। उन्होंने कहा कि संगठन जैसा कुछ उन्होंने निकाला। मैं दूसरे दिन वापस जब मैं इस चीज को सोचा, और इसी को सोच के हम लोगों ने जल सहेली की परिकल्पना करके एक कैडर खड़ा किया। तो मैं ये बताना चाहता हूं कि दरअसल क्या है कि व्यवहार और जिसको सिद्धांत, दो चीजें बड़ी भारत में जिसको हम कहते हैं कि एक तो आपके जो भी चीज है कि बिहेवियर में कैसे है और थ्योरी में कैसे है। तो एक पानी के एक ग्रास रूट एक्टिविस्ट होने के नाते मैं ये कहना चाहूंगा कि जल जीवन मिशन आने के बाद में मैं बहुत ही करेंट सिनारियो पे आप सबका ध्यान आकृष्ट कराना चाहूंगा कि जल जीवन मिशन आने के बाद में जिन जगह पे पानी आया है, अभी लास्ट जो अभी वर्ल्ड वाटर डे था, और वर्ल्ड वाटर डे में मानसी जी आप कहीं बिजी थे, हमने आपको भी याद किया था। तो फाइनली जो है वो हम लोगों ने एक रिसर्च करी, और रिसर्च करने के बाद अनामिका मैं आपको भी बताना चाहूंगा कि उस रिसर्च में हमने ये कोशिश करी कि हमारी जो रिसर्च विंग ने कि आखिरकार जैसा थीम था कि पानी से शांति, तो हमने ये कोशिश की कि ये आप एज्यूम करेंगे वेरी मतलब जिसको हम कह सकते हैं कल्पना से बाहर लोगों के आंसर आए। और हम लोगों ने जिन लोगों से एफजीडी या जिन लोगों के साथ में 1 to 1 इंटरव्यू किए, जिन गांव में पानी आया वहां महिलाओं ने कहा कि उनका पूरा जीवन बदल गया। जिस तरह से पानी को लेके समय कम हुआ वो नहीं महत्वपूर्ण, जो झगड़े होते थे वो कम हुए, और उनके जो लिविंग स्टैंडर्ड है उसमें कैसे चेंज आए, और इसके साथ साथ जो उनके लेवल पे उनके जो एक तरह से पानी घर के आने के पास में एक ऑनरशिप जो फील हो रही है उनको, वो बहुत, हालांकि मध्य प्रदेश जैसे राज्य में घर के बाहर ही कनेक्शन है, अभी भी टेप कनेक्शन मतलब जो है वो टेप स्टैंड है, हाउस होल्ड कनेक्शन घर के अंदर नहीं गए, लेकिन फिर भी लोग बहुत खुश हैं। और इसके बाद में आज सारी बहनों का एक ही सोच है कि काश अगर ये कहीं पानी आना बंद हो गया तो फिर क्या होगा। आखिरकार हमें ये जो पानी मिला जिसने हमें हमारा समय बचाया, हमारे स्वास्थ्य को ठीक किया, हमारी एक डिग्निटी हुई वो, तो आज हम उसके आधार पे कई गांव के आपको उदाहरण देना चाहूंगा कि हमारा एक गांव है छतरपुर में, और वहां की हमारी सरोज करके जल सहेली है, वो पूरे गांव का अपना टैरिफ वसूल कर रही है, और टैरिफ वसूल करने के बाद में उसको एक ही डर है कि उसके गांव की टंकी कभी बंद नहीं होनी चाहिए, खराब नहीं होना चाहिए। 7x24 पानी की मांग बहने करने लगी। 7x24 कैसे आए, विद गर्मी गर्मी हो चाहे कुछ जाड़ा हो, उनको उतना पानी चाहिए। और दोनों तीनों टाइम जो जिस तरह से उनके जीवन में साफ सफाई से लेके व्यक्तिगत स्वच्छता, घरेलू स्वच्छता, और इवन अब वो पर्यावरणीय स्वच्छता, क्योंकि वो किचन गार्डन भी बैकयार्ड में लगा रहे हैं। तो ये जो एक सवाल है, ये वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सवाल है कि हमारा ये दृष्टिकोण जो है, तो महिलाओं के बिना पानी के जैसे सवाल को लेके, तो मैं बहुत ही स्ट्रांगली वी आर एडवोकेटिंग कि वीमेन फर्स्ट राइट टू वाटर, दिस इज द थ्योरी ऑफ माय मतलब चेंज। तो मैं ये अपने सिद्धांत को जो कहता हूं कि मेरा जो सिद्धांत है कि महिलाओं की पानी पर प्रथम हकदारी होनी चाहिए। तो ये जब चीजें, इसमें पुरुषवादी समाज को, सरकारों को, सबको ये समझना चाहिए, और मैं ये बात दावे से कह रहा हूं कि जल जीवन मिशन की पूरी स्थायित्व और इसकी जितने भी भविष्य का जो है वो पूरा का पूरा महिलाओं के पार्टिसिपेशन पे जुड़ा है, जहां पे बहनें पैसा देने की तरफ आएंगी, इस तरह से ओएनडीएम करेंगे, और वो पंप ऑपरेटर से लेके और बाल ऑपरेटर तक के सारे काम खुद संभालेंगे, और रेवेन्यू के साथ साथ सारी चीजों को अपने हाथ में टेक ओवर कर रही हैं। वहीं पे हमें लगता है कि स्कीम सफल होती नजर आ रही है। जहां पे महिलाएं इस निर्णय और नेतृत्व की प्रक्रिया से बाहर रहेंगी, वहां पे इसके स्थायित्व को लेके अभी भी बहुत बड़े प्रश्न चिन्ह हैं। सरकार को अपनी पॉलिसीज में सोचना चाहिए। बहुत सारे जितने भी हमारे आईआईटी गुवाहाटी को मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगा, अनामिका जी को और मानसी और सबको, कि आप सब इस तरह से, ये एक बहुत विमर्श का विषय है, इसको एक विमर्श बनाने की जरूरत है, राष्ट्रीय विमर्श बनाने की जरूरत है, और राष्ट्रीय विमर्श बनाने के बाद में हम कैसे इसको ले जा सकते हैं, और एक कि महिलाओं की पानी पर प्रथम हकदारी हो, और वो उसके निर्णय और नियंत्रण, जिसको हम कहते हैं कि इंटाइटलमेंट का सवाल है ना, तो वो इंटाइटलमेंट के साथ साथ अप्रोच भी जहाँ पे एक्सिस और इंटाइटलमेंट दोनों चीजें जिस तरह से दिख रही हैं, वो सवाल उस लेवल पे होंगे, और जहां जहां पे ये नेतृत्व बहनें अपने हाथ में ले रही हैं वो दिखेगा, और इनको हमें इंक्रीज करना चाहिए, पॉलिसीज इनके फेवर में लानी चाहिए, और उसके आधार पे करनी चाहिए। हम तो देश के अलग अलग हिस्सों में जहां हम हैं वहां पे हम इस तरह का काम करने की, प्रमोट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। जल सहेली का मॉडल बुंदेलखंड से निकलकर मारवाड़ और अलग अलग इलाके में, आज मैं कोई अपने काम को बताने के लिए नहीं यहाँ आया हूँ, लेकिन मैं एक सिद्धांत और सोच के साथ पे बता रहा हूँ कि किताबें भी उसी तरह से लिखी जानी चाहिए, रिसर्च भी आना चाहिए। और एक चीज जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि जल के लिए, अगर शांति के लिए जल होना बहुत जरूरी है, और उसमें हम एक चीज और कहना चाहेंगे कि शांति के लिए जल, और इसमें महिलाओं का बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल है, जिसको हम कहते हैं कि महिलाओं का वो इसमें सपोर्ट, वो एक तरह से हम लोग इस विचारधारा को बहुत प्रखर रूप से लोगों के बीच ले जाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, और लोगों को इससे आत्मसात कराने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू संजय जी, बने रहिए। और थैंक यू। टेक अवे फ्रॉम दिस राउंड, importantly I think Chandra laid a very important point, that having people around and inspiration, and importantly from tradition. एंड देन दो शब्द मैं संजय जी की से आई थिंक आई पिक नियंत्रण और बेसिकली जैसे वहाँ उन्होंने बोला है कि इसमें उनका आमंत्रण के साथ साथ नियंत्रण भी होना चाहिए जल की भागीदारी में। उनका उनका ना ही खाली जल की जिम्मेदारी होनी चाहिए बल्कि डिसीजन मेकिंग में भी उनका रोल होना चाहिए। सो we'll move on to the second round and I'll invite Anamika to take up the second round questions, please, to whoever you would
Thank you.
like to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mansi. And I think, of course, the conversation is getting more and more interesting. I want to just very quickly invite Anjal once again. And, Anjal, यहाँ पे मैं एक बात आपको पूछना चाहती हूँ that see, we keep talking about bringing women, number of women enrollment, recruitment, everywhere we talk about badhna chahiye. It should increase because when more and more women join the labor force, joins institutions, joins bureaucracy, we will see that women are becoming a part of decision-making process. Now, what question I have is, it's not just always about the number. It is also about creating an enabling environment for the women when she comes and joins those institutions. I'm a woman. I have been in various high level positions. I know the challenges. So I want to understand from you, how can we in different institutions, organizations, how can we not just bring women, but also make her feel happy, safe, secured, and also give her the opportunity to speak what she wants to say. Again, probably those organizations will be male dominated. So, what do you think one can do about it in terms of
Thank you
policies,
so
for
much.
example?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Anamika. I think before I joined Saki Waters, I had been working not in a decision-making scenarios, but we whenever you are number two, number three, or in the line, you are actually making some changes and in a small sphere of influence that you have. But I think the major changes that I started to do when we started to work closely in Saki Waters, and that is where a couple of things that I can give you example from which one has carried later on. The first thing we did is that we also wanted the workplace safer for women. So anybody who joins, we had trainings on sexual harassment. We had trainings on gender. It was actually in the air. So a lot of people who will join, who had joined as youngsters in Saki Waters, the gender issue, equity issues, they were all inherent in the organization itself. So that's number one. And second part is, I think, flexi environment. And we, before pandemic had struck, we started to give, and especially because Saki Water's work was more research oriented, place was not that important, and a lot of field work was there, but people can do it at their ease and from wherever they operate. So we started work from home much before the work from home became very strong, kind of a policy for many organizations. And that we see that you have some flexibility in the working areas where women have actually, if we can win workforce are much more. So you have a correlation that I've seen over the years that you give this kind. The third is we also started, and Jyoti is here, and she can tell us whether we still continue with the policy. We started with 5 days extra leave for women, especially for menstruation leave.
Yes.
And we were the first one way back, I would say 15 years before, that we introduced this. And I'm not sure whether it's still there, but I think that's a very progressive policy for women to take rest when they needed, the physical body needed rest. You have extra leave, and and what I've seen that, anybody who you're proactively supporting them, you get compounded benefits, and that has been unchecked. So I have never been failed to see that somebody is not performing. People have overperformed wherever I have worked, and that's something that is there. Coming to the my present work in ISB, in Bharatiya Institute of Public Policy, we also have similar things, and thankfully all the team members are very gender sensitive and equity sensitive. We have much more larger women workforce than men. Not to celebrate, but at least that the places that we are much more safer for women to work and retain the places that they have, right? So it's not only about reaching the area, but also being there for longer time. At least you are able to create such environment where women stay longer and they feel safer to be there, and they own the organization as much as you do. That is what I would suggest. Couple of other thing that we also had looked into in terms of the work. So if you look at the education, research, and advocacy, three areas, our research has been, we have included, and I'll explain to you further from my IPCC work also how we have looked into this one. But research also has to be very gender sensitive, because there's not much of a content that we get. Most of the content that you have is very I mean, in a sense that they don't look into their gender blind, and they're not proactive enough to understand. B, also they do not want, because they don't have much training to even look into from that lens that they have. So these are things that I would say. In education also, we bring in more equality in terms of what we call the advocacy, especially in ISB. I can tell you that we have a very progressive policy. If you look at other IIMs versus ISB, we have almost reached about 50% of classroom which is inhabited by women, or women, girl student are actually taking the space that we have, and that is because certain proactive active work that has been done by ISB, and ISB has been there from beginning. They had been very strong on gender issues, and then our classrooms are much more diversified. That would say, in fact, in Bharatiya Institute of Public Policy, we have the first transgender person who actually has joined us about 6 months before. She's part of the Odisha team, and very interesting. So this diversity of workplace, that is there, very interesting for us to celebrate. Over to you.
Thank you, Anjal. Yes, I am aware of the interventions you had made in Saki Water, and I think yes, this was very very interesting because even I did not realize, to be honest, that we need to do something like that. Maybe because being a women, we are so used to pushing ourselves to go out even those 5 days. So we never realized that this can be so much comfortable for a women. So yes, that was a very very progressive way of looking at things, and we did continue with it. Like what you told is very interesting and important, that one has to make an enabling environment. I also very strongly feel, and that is why today we have this session, is that you were heading Saki Water, and then you have people who are in those influential positions are sensitive about gender issues. I think it can really percolate down because they can take policy decisions. Now, with this, I want to come to Vishal. And Vishal, what I want to know from you, that because you mentioned you have been doing a lot of research around gender, particularly related to water resource. What do you think where we are lacking behind in terms of research, in terms of our education curriculum? Because when I teach, even in IIT, sometimes you open a chapter itself, there are so much of gendered way of looking at things. The photograph or the picture they will give, women is carrying water, men is in the farm, is a farmer. So, just before I hand it over, we asked some students to make a photograph of just we say farmer, and everybody came up with a male photograph. So, how do you look at this? What are the challenges? How can we overcome these challenges from the education point of view, research and education?
So, yeah, thanks, Anamika. So I think that, the more I engage with the subject of gender, I find that it means different things to different people. So, if you have 4 people talking about gender, you can't be sure that they're talking about the same thing. So some people actually are talking about your gender identity. Some people are talking about your sexual orientation. Some people are talking about women. Yeah. So I think on the one hand, it's nice to see that there's growing recognition of different kinds of sexual minorities, their rights and privileges. But I think it also in a way, analytically and conceptually complicates the discourse on gender, because when you talk to people about gender, they have different frames of reference. They have different things in their mind, right? And once I was in a group where we had clubbed academics with medical practitioners, and I asked the group, what are the difference between sex and gender, right? And I was surprised that even the medical practitioners said that it meant the same thing, and that was really an eye-opener. I said, you're medical practitioners, and you think that sex and gender are the same thing, right? Okay. So there is this tendency, especially in policy circles, to think that gender is about women, right? And that too about poor, marginalized women, right? Okay. And that's where the problem starts, because we don't look at gender, especially in policy and practice, in terms of the differences between men and women. So we say that gender problem is a women's problem, so it requires women's empowerment. Right, so the onus, the burdens completely shifts to the poor, marginalized woman who needs to be trained, build capacity, and men, sit like this, like I have nothing to do with this. This is women's empowerment. Okay, so I think that's an important issue to tackle. So I have my own reservations about using the word women empowerment, because it really projects women in a very negative light to my mind, right? And I think that if there are going to be capacity building programs on women empowerment, then they should be targeting men. Yeah, that's how I look at it. Okay. Having said that, there are of course challenges in doing research in the field on gender, especially when you're a man. And very often, when I want to interview women, I'm directed to their husbands or to their fathers-in-law? And I said, no, I want to interview the woman. They said, no, what is it that she will tell you that we can't tell? Right? And I was doing this project recently, right, with the Navjyoti India Foundation. So, they build these women's self-help groups, and we were investigating what kinds of effects it has had on the women who are members of these SHGs. And I wanted to talk to the women members, right? And so the husbands and the fathers-in-law, they almost act as gatekeepers. They say that, no, you ask me what you want to know. Why do you have to go to the woman? Okay, so there's an important methodological challenge there, which complicates the other reservations that you may have as a male researcher, right? Trying to talk to rural women when you're doing fieldwork. So I think that's another issue that we need to address. So I think that we need to talk a lot to academics, right? When you're talking education, but when you talk to academics at senior levels, so who are in academic administrative positions like deans, right? Or vice chancellors, yeah, to see what kind of commitment there is to bring in a focus on gender and social inclusion within, say, water resources education. Yeah, so you may have, say, an interdisciplinary program that brings about a gender lens on water, but it's externally funded. So if it's externally funded, then what happens to the program? So I think from that perspective, it's very important to gauge the commitment of senior academics, of academic administrators who are in important positions of academic decision-making, yeah, to see what is the level of commitment there is at an institutional level to bring in a gender perspective, bring in a perspective of gender and social inclusion within water resources education, yeah? And the last thing, which I found very interesting, especially in all my training and capacity building efforts, so we were doing this program on gender rights and equity in water management in Jaipur, yeah, in a highly patriarchal environment, yeah, and the large bulk of our participants were male engineers from the water resources bureaucracy. And when I started, one of the students said that, why are we talking about gender? What is nature's law should not be tampered with, right? Okay, so there is this tendency to think that, no, that this is how things are defined. Why should we tamper with that, right? And then we started off explaining that, well, no, there's nothing natural about gender. Gender is a social construct. And that is why, and therefore tackling these very deeply rooted patriarchal attitudes among men, yeah, I think is extremely important if you want to move forward in education, research, training, and capacity building on gender.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Vishal. Completely agree that it is so ingrained and so deeply rooted. There is no doubt that it is taking time. Many times you get many a times, in fact, you get frustrated that how many more years. But I do also see that, of course, things are changing, but it is taking time because these are so ingrained. And I think that's the reason we need to have much more conversation around this topic. And that's what I think forum like W4W is really an excellent forum where we come together and talk about these things. So now I'm going to again hand it over to you, Mansi, for the second round with Sanjay ji and Chandra ji.
Yeah. Thank you, Anamika. And I'll pick some things from what Vishal and Anjay were saying, and particularly when Vishal mentioned that I also strongly believe that men needs to be trained more about empowerment when it comes to empowerment as a word, especially when we're talking about gender. And I think also very clearly laid out that gender studies needs studying of all kinds of gender and not really taking it for granted as it is a study for women. So I'm also thinking that should we actually title this session as Women Matters More Than Gender Matters, because naturally we drifted to discussing women matters in this session as well. So that's a very important lesson for us also. Before I move to Chandra and Sanjay ji, can you hear us? Because I don't see you. So I'm just wondering, are you around, Sanjay ji? So if we are looking at women from the point of view of, and also that was a point which was made, that the moment we talk about gender, we have this stereotype image of Abla Nari syndrome. I call it Abla Nari syndrome, to be honest. And we have to go past that. And I'm very happy to discuss very briefly about Wiki Water Resource Council here, because this was the very reason why I was so convinced about Wiki Water Resource Council, because often the idea of women in water is portrayed in the manner as discussed by Anjal and Vishal. And here we have to talk about professional women who are working in the water sector, which Anamika, you started the round two, how to create that enabling environment for women who work in the water sector, not only professional women, but women at all levels of actions. So if we look at that way, I feel that conversations between men and women, between men and men, between men, women and women are equally important, which we are trying to do through W for W. And we are running this Monday Munching with Women for Water, where we are celebrating women, I will say, women workers in water sector. But at the same time, we have invited men to talk about how it is to work with women. And Vishal has been already, Vishal Chandra, you have already come to that platform. So just to give this little flavor of what has gone with 250 sessions of W for W as a break, because I thought Sanjay ji should appear before I start the second round of questions. So coming to maybe I take Chandra first again and discuss if you could share, because you both are from grassroots, and that's where we have a good mix of the session today, where we are talking of both sides of looking at profession and practice at the grassroots. So Chandra, what kind of endeavor is there where you are seeing your engagement with women workforce? If you can really enlighten us with Watson, how did you got that huge workforce and what it is to work with that large number of women together, and what are your key learnings, probably opportunities and challenges also for people like you to work with them and for them to work in a large women group? Over to you, Chandra.
Yeah, two things importantly. I found that the woman is more concerned about the health and the economy of the family, as I told you earlier. So my first take was to take women workforce to both my factory and my assembly shop. And it was not that easy because I don't believe in building up capital like any other industry would do. So what did I look all the social angle in each and every aspect of my life? They become part and parcel. So what I did, I took a old abandoned rice mill of a farmer to convert that into my nano clay candle manufacturing unit. So we could give him some 15, 16,000 so that the farmer can also sustain himself. Because all these big rice mills have come, the power mills run by the politician, and small marginal farmers are done away. So that was the first step. Then immediately I was looking at the Irula community women who are enslaved in these brick kilns, totally working for hours together. They are also mishandled by the landlords and things like that. Just for a tola of gold and some silk sari, Kanchipuram sari, they are lured. And they say, when you get married, I'll give you this, and these poor women fall trapped into this vicious cycle. So I pulled up few families from that, made those women, because brick cutting and my candle cutting is similar, except for my candle has nanopores, which will filter the anomaly and bring only the water down. So we have to just tweak them to the technical part of it. But they are very good in doing that work for long hours. So what I make these families feel comfortable. In summer, they can start very early in the morning and they can take rest during the hot sun. They need not struggle. And in the evening, they can again continue. Same way in the winter, they need not do it in the early morning. They can do in the noon hour. So I made a flexi hour thing, making them feel comfortable. So the families first started believing, okay, this man understands what humanity is all about. Forget about male, female gender. Second thing, these women are like entrapped into their male psychosis. So whatever the husband says, then only they listen or they do something like that. So this was bit a problem. So I did a session for the men actually. भाई वो लड़की को फ्रीली आराम से काम करने दो, वो अपने आप काम करेगी और वो इनफैक्ट अच्छी तरह काम करेगा. That was a mental block. Again, the woman works hard, she makes money, husband will take it and go and loiter or drink booze and come back and fall flat, but still the woman has to work hard to again give him money for boozing. So that was the first ban I brought into my company, to my work system. The men were warned very clearly. You are bloody going to drink and waste money and your family, ruin your family. You and your thing will be out. I'll give independence to the women. She will continue to work, but not a single penny to come to you. And in fact, I even told, educate them on how to beat him black and blue, throw him out of the door. Maybe next day only he should know that if he doesn't drink only, he's allowed into the room. These were all very radical, but those women are also feeling bad. Enna sir, adike solreenga, why do you allow me to beat him? I said, mentally, make him feel that you are the breadwinner and he is dependent on, in this case. So that psychosis happened slowly. I am happy to say in this 10 years, in both my assembly shop and in my workforce, all are 99% women standing on their own feet. Where there are abuses, that have stopped. Where there are drunkard husbands beating them, that was stopped. Where children understood that their mother is really running the family, creating the economic wealth for them and making their lives happier, the husbands change. When May Day, I take them for a heritage tour. That time we insist the whole family should come. Then only they understand what the boss is all about. I don't boss around, but I am part of your family. My wife also comes along with you in the tour. You are also coming together. We are all eating together. We all are going out together, enjoying life. It is more of enjoying our values more than the money or the status or anything. These were all slowly imbibed. Second thing, if you take politics or anything, no, the sarpanch will be a woman, but it will be completely controlled by a man. That also I broke away. I knew few local sarpanches here. I told her very clearly. आप खुद अक्ल लगा रहे दिमाग लगा रहे कि वो उनका अक्ल से आप चला रहे फिर आपका क्या मतलब है why do you have this position and power so slowly you tell her that she can do a better job than the male fiefdom so these type of changes has to happen very slowly second rung I am very happy that the children have understood that my mother has worked hard to come to this position in this company she has been the change maker in the whole game of thing in fact the quality control department also I don't have anybody I just told my women आपकी जैसा और एक नारी है गांव में कोई कचरा पानी लेके उसको शुद्ध करके हमारा शुद्धिकरण से पी रहे तो आप सोच लो कितना शुद्ध साफ आपको हाथ और बाल सब रखने का फिर काम करने का दैट इज द ओनली क्वालिटी कंट्रोल मैसेज आई टोल्ड दे आर डूइंग exemplarily good so there are all small things which we needed to tell the woman that you are enabler you are the change maker and that really brings the change importantly when I started off my factory or my 10 by 10 room where I started off my assembly no I didn't have any workers at all I did not getting any male members one girl she was 80% body burn her fingers literally dangle. She doesn't have a proper set of finger also. There's only two lump in her hand. She came to me and asked for a job. I was so happy that somebody is asking for a job. I'm going to become an employer and she is my first employee. Touchwood today, she is still there with me. Very empowered, very knowledgeable and she can do every work as good as any other enabled person. Indra is her name. In fact, her father named after Indira Gandhi, man with steely nerve and brain. And this girl really was true to her nerves, and she is the one of the senior most employee. Another woman, even after she was widowed recently, she is 65 years old. She said, "Sir, I am getting bored in my home. I feel very comfortable and at home. I feel at home when I come to the factory and work with other women. When I come to the assembly shop." So these type of family bonding, not as
Uh,
like an employer-employee, this type of bonding has enabled this
I'm
happen.
coming to.
And that is the reason I had been very successful in employing women force. And I
मानसी
would
जी
say they are my extended family.
जी
And because of them and for them, I will keep running. Thank you.
थैंक यू संजय जी
मानसी जी मेरे मेरे पास 3 मिनट है क्योंकि मेरी दूसरी कॉल शुरू हो रही है मैं माफी
श्योर
चाहूंगा
श्योर श्योर जी जी आप प्लीज बताइए कि जल सहेली के बारे में थोड़ा कितने जगह फैला हुआ है और क्या मतलब अपॉर्चुनिटीज एंड चैलेंजेस आप जल सहेलियां फेस करती हैं
नहीं नहीं मैं सबको सुन रहा था पहले तो मैं ऑल द स्पीकर्स मतलब सबको ये कहूँगा कि सारे लोगों ने अपने इनोवेशंस पे बात करी और जो इन्वायरमेंट है सो बेसिकली थैंक यू फॉर ऑल ऑफ यू बेसिकली जल सहेली का जो काम है वो मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि जल सहेली इस समय भारत के 2 राज्यों में उत्तर प्रदेश मध्य प्रदेश के 7 जिलों के 700 से अधिक गांव में उनका विस्तार है और अभी यहाँ पे और इसी तरह से 5 जिले जो राजस्थान के मारवाड़ के हैं जोधपुर के आसपास के इलाके हैं खासतौर से जोधपुर और ये जैसलमेर वाला जो इलाका है तो उस इलाके में ये जल सहेलियों का नेटवर्क है लेकिन हमारा यह है कि 2030 तक हम 1 लाख जल सहेली बनाने का हमारा लक्ष्य है कि हम 2030 तक 1 लाख जल सहेली बनाएंगे और उसके लिहाज से अभी हमने जो टारगेट किया है कि बुंदेलखंड उत्तर प्रदेश मध्य प्रदेश में 8,000 गांव हैं तकरीबन इन 8,000 गांव में हर गांव में हमारा जल सहेली का कैडर तैयार हो पहले तो ये है कि और ये हर दिन नई कुछ संख्या ऐड हो रही इकाई दहाई से शुरू हुआ सिलसिला 1,000 तक पहुंच गया है और 1,000 के आगे आज की तिथि में अगर हम देखें तो एज ऑन डेट टुडे इन नियर अबाउट इन 2,126 नंबर ऑफ जल सहेली तो ये एक नंबर है जो जल सहेली उसको अभी हैं और जल सहेलियाँ अपने काम में इनकी जो चुनौती है वो चुनौती ये है कि शुरुआत में तो इनको थोड़ा सा अपने जो पुरुष प्रधान समाज है उसकी मानसिकता से जूझना पड़ता है, क्योंकि ग्राम सभा से लेके और फिर उनको वहाँ पे बीडब्ल्यूएससी में सक्रिय होना, और फिर बीडब्ल्यूएससी के सक्रिय होने के साथ साथ अब तो जीपीडीपी और इन सब का हिस्सा बनने का सवाल है। तो एक तरह से अगर हम देखें तो जल सहेलीज के आने के बाद में इन्वायरमेंट बहुत अच्छा हुआ, जिसको कहा जाए कि फेवरेबल कंडीशंस फॉर वुमेन, ये एक तरह का वातावरण हम देख पा रहे हैं। दूसरी बड़ी बात ये है कि पॉलिसीज के लेवल पे भी लोग अब सरकार के जितने भी हाल में सेक्टर रिफॉर्म के प्रोग्राम आए, सो गवर्नमेंट इज ऑल्सो मैंशनिंग अबाउट दी इन मतलब वुमेन पार्टिसिपेशन, फॉर एग्जांपल जल जीवन मिशन एंड ऑल स्कीम्स ऑफ इन अटल भूजल एटसेट्रा। और इसके बाद ही जो बड़ा सवाल है वो है खासतौर से इनोवेशंस का, कि जल सहेलियां अपने गांव में पानी क्या, जैसे अभी चंद्रा साहब बता रहे हैं कि उन्होंने इतनी महिलाओं को जोड़ा है और पानी दे रहे हैं, शुद्ध पानी मिल रहा है, लेकिन ये एक फिल्टर का आपने कंपनी में काम किया, लेकिन ये जल सहेलियां जो हमारी हैं वो कई तरह के और इनोवेशंस जो कर रहे हैं, और इन्होंने अपने गांव के तालाब और नदियों को ठीक करने का जो काम किया है, कितने सारे प्रेसिडेंट अवार्ड्स जीते हैं, कितने नेशनल अवार्ड्स जीते हैं, कितने यूएन के अवार्ड्स जीते हैं। अभी लास्ट हफ्ते ही वो जो एक इंडिया हिस्ट्री चैनल है, तो उसमें वो था उनका, रोज कुछ ना कुछ नए एपिसोड आ रहे हैं, और बड़े बड़े जितने भी देश के मीडिया हाउसेस हैं उनमें फ्रंट लाइन में उन जल सहेली का नाम आ रहा है। तो ये अभी इस तरह से अगर इनकी चुनौती देख रहे हैं, तो अब इनको हम देख रहे हैं कि लिटरेसीज के लेवल पे, खासतौर से वाटर लिटरेसी कैसे इनकी इंक्रीज की जाए, क्योंकि अब वाटर गवर्नेंस के ऊपर इन लोगों ने काम शुरू किया है, वाटर बजट पे, वाटर ऑडिट पे, वाटर यूज इफिशिएंसी पे, यही चुनौती है। इसी के आधार पर हमें आगे बढ़ना है। मुझे अपनी बात यहाँ रोकनी पड़ेगी क्योंकि मेरी अगली कॉल स्टार्ट हो गई है। थैंक यू सो मच, मुझे लीव
थैंक
करना
यू
होगा।
संजय जी।
हाँ जी
थैंक
जी।
यू
थैंक
संजय
यू।
जी, प्लीज बने रहिए, पर ठीक है, आप दूसरा कॉल भी लीजिए। बने रहिए, हम अगर जरूरत पड़ेगा तो हम आपको वापस बुला लेंगे। तो आप प्लीज बने रहिए, ठीक है ना? थैंक यू।
मानसी जी, मैं बिल्कुल पॉसिबल नहीं है, क्योंकि
अच्छा,
वो एक
ठीक
बहुत
है।
ही इम्पोर्टेंट कॉल है, और देश के बाहर से बहुत सारे लोग उसमें जुड़ रहे हैं, तो
जी जी
मुझे
जी
थोड़ा सा
जी, या
लीव करना
जी।
पड़ेगा। थैंक यू
थैंक यू
सो
सो
मच।
मच संजय जी, हम आपको अलग से कनेक्ट करेंगे। थैंक यू। सो लेट अस कंटिन्यू एंड की takeaways from the second round of discussion. Both Sanjay ji and Chandra really highlighted how important it is for women also to engage, but at the same time how it is for them that it becomes a very convenient cycle of innovation as well as engagement in doing things together. So it's like a cluster of women. If they come together, it is already a big force, workforce, as we are looking at it. So in both the Jal Saheli case and Watson, where they have really large number of women working together, I think they develop a ecosystem which makes it enabling for each other as well. Of course, led by these men who are our panelists also. And I think Anamika, you had already mentioned in the beginning that if we have male advocates who are here today, uh, I think we still see, I mean, hope. And of course, the transition is slow, but the hope becomes stronger. So I think we can, with these words, I can hand it over to you for round three. And also, I think, request all the participants to join in the round three discussion so that we can make it an open forum from here on. Over to you, Anam. Please
Thank you,
put your
Mansi.
questions in the chat box. Sorry. Yeah, all
Yeah.
participants are requested to put their questions in the chat box or also raise your hand so we can just take you impromptu. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Very, very quick question to all of you, and as we would like to quickly now move to the participant. The question is that what is your advice to the other male who you feel that should also become, or should also join the cause for bringing gender equality? So how can you, as somebody who is advancing gender equality, what would you advise and how would you promote awareness and understanding about others as well? So I would now first like to invite Vishal, and then I would request Anjan. And I think Chandraji, it will be good to hear from you as well.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Namika. Just a few quick remarks. So I think that you have to look at both your professional and your personal life, right? When you're talking about gender equality. And I think that especially men can play an important role by being role models to their sons. Yeah. So for instance, I like to spend time in the kitchen and I enjoy that. And I think and that also encourages my son to come and ask for some recipes that and when we were growing up, we grew up in a very different kind of environment. Yeah, so I think one is that men can act as role models for their sons, but also I think I draw a lot of strength. So in the Buddhist literature, there's this concept of anat. Anat means non-self, which means that there is no permanent core identity that we have. So there's no permanent thing called Vishal. So I will not get into that, but basically it means that there's no permanent essence in us, and we're all bundles of aggregates. In the Buddhist literature, we say form, perception, consciousness, mental formation, and intention. Yeah, which means that there's no core masculine or feminine self. Yeah, and we are amenable to different kinds of influences. We can respond differently in different kinds of environments. So I think that thought that there's nothing that's by definition masculine, or there's nothing that's by definition feminine, right? Is for me personally very liberating, which means that you should cultivate what is good for you, what is good for others, regardless of whether society calls it masculine or feminine. So I think that's for me personally a good starting point. Having said that, I think that at a more applied and policy level, we need to talk more about gender in the government. Yeah, and as an academic, so when I teach in my public policy program to mid-career civil servants, often I'm talking to gender to a class full of men, right? Okay, and many of them have never gone through a course on gender. Many of them have never, in a structured, systematic way, spoken about gender or thought about gender. And so for them, gender is really a new conceptual lens. Yeah, it's a new way of looking at the world. And then I ask them, at the end of the session, that take this understanding of gender and apply it to your organization. So when you go back to your organization, what could you do, to make your workplace a more gendered one or a more gender sensitive one? And also look at public service delivery. Yeah, so we think of public policies in a very gender neutral or sometimes rather gender blind way. And it may not hit us that the same policy, the same intervention affects men and women in different ways. And then I ask my participants that they pick up a policy and look at it using a gendered lens. So when this policy comes to the ground, how will it affect men and women in different ways? Yeah. And finally, there's a risk of overdoing gender because gender is one of the many axes of social differentiation in our society. Right? Okay. And I always say that for gender to be used systematically as a useful, construct, it has to be seen in relation to other axes of social differentiation. Yeah, and that's why a lens of intersectionality is important. Yeah, when we're talking about gender, because all men and women are not the same. Yeah, so women are also not a homogeneous soul. So think of gender in relation to class, identity, color, age, marital status. So I think these are some of the points that I think are important moving forward.
Thank you, Vishal. Chandraji?
Yeah, I would rather put it much simpler. Why ever give that feel of male, female, gender, and whatnot? Let them be given merits based on their qualification or the work skill they do. In fact, in my office, I don't have this rooms at all. Separate cabin for boss, separate all those stuff. We have a big hall in which we all have all our tables. They can just walk in. Any of my worker can also come and walk in, put their woes to me. Suppose they have a problem, they can discuss. So we first broke the physical barrier, then the mental barrier. So now they know very well. In fact, this standard practice of going for a money lender for all the small money leads, whether there is a shadi ho, barwadi ho, kuch bhi ho, 5,000, 10,000 ये लोग ले लेते. I stopped that rat first. I told them, you come to me, take the money from my accountant, and you decide the EMI also. Zero interest. Let us say 10,000 she is taking. She is able to pay only 1,000 rupees EMI every month for next 10 months. So they will decide and they will take the money and go. So these type of smaller things which can empower women, make them feel free, make them not burden, all has to be slowly incorporated in a policy level. So that they feel, okay, there is somebody for me to fall behind. There is somebody, it's not that I am too great or I have a big bank, nor I am an NFBC. But the point is, anyway, I am making comfortable for you, so you feel this is the best place for you to work and live together. You should not feel the difference that when I come here, it's a workplace, it's a different place. There's a lot of male around. I am feeling difficult. Or maybe I go home, again, my husband is burdening me with so much of work or stuff like that. So again, as Vishalji said, I also love cooking. Whenever my wife is feeling tired or anything like that, I don't mind. In fact, whole of Corona, she was in Bombay, transferred in her job, and 1.5 years, I managed taking care of my children and my aged mother. I was cooking food for them. Again, this type of mental barrier. Even if you take skill building in the government policy or anything, ये चुड़िया बनाने का, गुड़िया बनाने का, ये सब लड़कियों को देते हैं. Why not women going? They are going for making rocketry. They are in armed forces. They are in aerospace. Why don't you raise the bar on your mentally, in your mind, that they can do anything as good as a male member, or a male member cannot do anything like what they can do. So this type of mental barrier, they just quantify skills also, and simpler skills for women. This also should be removed from the mental barrier of the men force actually. So those type of small barriers, if they are removed, start thinking they are also equally another human being with full set of skills and valor. I think it could become more open, and in fact, transgenders can also adopt it. Why should you have this even column, female, male, or transgender, anything? Even remove that, no. Even caste. Go to any admission form, you have this caste, religion, and all this stuff. Remove that. Why don't we go with a very open forum? They have merit, let them take the job. They have merit, let them do the job. And that's it, even salaries. Wimbledon, somebody pays very high for the men player, he wins the trophy. Women player is given something half of that. Why should you do that? First, these type of barriers should be bloody removed from our mind and the system. For their stamina and for their energy, they have also toiled a lot to get that first prize or something like that. Why can't they be given equal money? So it has to start from the top. The think tank has to do from the top to the bottom. Then only the whole thing will change. It's not just Chandra and Vishal speaking that and then the change will happen. It has to happen from all that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Just one thing I want to say, that I am still looking for forms where they will not ask for wife of and daughter of. And that day we will be
You
really
nailed
happy.
it.
Yes. Okay, Anjal, to you now.
Yeah, I think the questions are also coming, but let me just
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
quickly build on what Vishal and Chandrasekhar has already said. So I think for me, it's very, same thing. It's personal is political. So first is to have gender principles adhered at home itself, right? The first thing is that, it's not only about talking gender, but also doing gender. How do we look at that in a personal capacity? Whatever you do, it has to be scanned through not only gender, but also other social differentiation or the what we call the intersectionality that we have. For example, very simple thing: your maid comes. I know I make nice breakfast early morning and I give it to them whenever I have time. And it's just treating them as equal as you are and not discriminating. Then a lot of houses, and I'm just openly telling this, have different plates for different types of people. Different sitting areas for different types. Of those inequalities have to be first adhere. So your personal level, you need to first resolve those issues for yourself.
Yeah.
And then some places that you have to also put your foot down, saying this is not acceptable in the household, right? So that thankfully in my house everybody has equal has a same understanding. So I have no problems in doing that. But in some houses where we see, we also point it out and we tell them that it's not acceptable. So that's number one. I think, apart from what Vishal has already said, I think the point that I will emphasize on is training. Not many people have actually had gone through a proper gender and equity training, and it's more so for people who are working in the social space where this is much more important for their daily, work that they do, and that lens has to be given. So, IT's Gender Development Program is an advanced management program, public policy. A clear typical batch of 50 will have about 30 IS, IPS, IRS officers, and 20 coming from corporate NGO sectors and mostly from the government affairs people. This course has been largely quite because I also deliver the course in a manner that it's seamless for them. So you have activity-based learning. You don't give lecture on it, but you just have situations where people have to take decision, and when they take decision, they really get confused whether this is right, this is wrong, and all that. And then the way you also teach is also important for you to there. And that's what I bring in some of my training acumen in the classroom. And it's not a typical academic debate that is happening on some academic topic, but it's a day-to-day thing. What Vishal has also said about, so a lot of role plays I do. I get into thing. I also bring in last two classes. I have brought, one is Manjri Jaruhar, who was the first women IPS officer of Bihar cadre. She has an extremely beautiful book that she's written, Madam Sir, which actually talks about. So I asked a student to review the book, and then I requested her to come to the class and speak to them. Now, seeing is believing, right? So the people when next class I also got a transgender activist. She came and she spoke. So that is what you do. You also innovate in the things that this is not hitting people on the nail, but try to slowly change. And that's what I've seen. So that these 2 points, there are a lot to talk, but I think there's a time is quite scarce. So let's just discuss also on some of the points, a question that are coming. Yeah, over to you, Nana.
Yeah. No, thank you to all three of you on this. Just one last point before I hand it over to Mansi. I think one thing that I really appreciate about one of the things that I'm aware what Anjal does is that he would never accept to be a part of all men panel. And this example, I think I have given, and I'm sure even Vishal also does it, and I'm sure Chandraji also does, but just I'm taking Anjal's name because I am very much aware of it. And I actually give this example to many men who still considers or accept such invitation that little effort, if you really want to make, just say, no, I don't want to be in this panel. Get at least 2 women, if not 50%, at least have some representation of women on that panel. And that doesn't require a lot of effort as well. So thank you to all three of you. I'm going to now hand it over to Mansi, and Mansi, now over to you.
Thank you, Anamika, and thanks for the wonderful round 3 to really ask way forward to all of them and how they are actually conducting the engendering process in their and rightly used word from personal to politics. I mean, it goes like that, to be honest. Definitely, as Chandra was also mentioning, I also believe that I would like to live a day in my life where we don't need to discuss gender, and the very fact that the word itself has got skewed that gender is equal to woman. And I am really keen to start a conversation on men in water because we are already working on women in water. So maybe it will be a good idea to start discussing what havoc men have created in the field of water because we have water crisis and it is men have done it. So just to put in a lighter note, so I think we can take up the questions because people who have been here from the point 1 of the discussion, and we will wrap it up after we hear our participants. So there's one question for Anjal in the chat box. I'm sure you have picked it up from there, and maybe we hear Sumit and Jayati, and then we will direct it to all people. So please unmute yourself and request if you can put on your video, then because we are live, so your so our screen will not be a black box, so we can see you there as well. So over to you, Sumit, first, and then Jayati, and then we will open the questions, answers. Yeah.
Hi, Mansi. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Anamika, for organizing this panel. Really appreciate it. Something new to hear. I have a question which maybe looks into the element of inclusivity. Now, my question starts with this, that there are several critical feminist scholars who would say that such an approach of what we discussed today in the panel may not work because we need much more, I would say, transformative, but also more critical way, more harsh way of reaching out or influencing the policies, but also men. Now, in that scenario, how would the approach we were discussing today would include and bring these different approaches on feminism towards us of what we were discussing today? I'm really curious to hear that front of how do we bring our efforts together. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks, Sumit. Let me just pick Jayati's question so that we can allocate the questions to all the speakers. So, Jayati, please switch on your camera and please pose your question, suggestion, whatever you have.
Yeah, thank you, Mansi. Actually, I'm outside, so I'll not be able to switch on the camera.
No issues.
So please allow me. So it's not a
Yeah.
question. So one thing is like because Anjal asked me about gender policy, like the current status. So I would like to mention that like we have all gender equity policy and practice in place. In fact, we are taking it a step further by supporting men. Like again, the same point that gender doesn't mean only women. So we also allow men employee or team members to take care of their female family members. For an example, when I joined Saki Waters, soon after that, like we have a colleague, his wife was pregnant and she was on bed rest, and he wanted to work from home. So I allowed him to work for 5 months from home. So I think it's also to actually support men to support women, because sometimes like you allow women to take leave, maybe like during periods, a women might need some support system at home when she's alone, so you can even consider that kind of leave for men also. So that is one point. The other point is like it's just a concern that while we talk about increasing enrollment in educational program, which I understand that it's crucial, but at the same time retaining these professional in the sector is a greater challenge. And it's not rare, it's very common, because most of the women, they take a break for like long break for motherhood unless they have a permanent or government job. Then retaining to a full time career afterwards is often very difficult, because they take this career break, and sometimes it becomes like 4 years 5 years till the kid starts going to school, and then getting back to full time career becomes very challenging, and especially organizations are still not very open for these kind of recruitments. I think retaining women professional is more challenging than having more and more in the sector. Yeah, that is this.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jayati. So we'll take each of the questions. Let's start with Debarchana Biswas, and the question is directed to Anjal. So Anjal, would you like to respond? And Debarchana, if you would like to engage further, you may switch on your video also. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, Debarchana, very good question. Let me just explain to you how I know when I was selected for IPCC, it was the special report on oceans and cryosphere, which was defended in 2019. And when and it was, a very technical report, because it really focused on two interdependent but independent system called the oceans and the cryosphere, and trying to see how, and mostly the people who were there were the hardcore scientists, right? And then when I started to talk about how gender issues will be included, I was actually pushed back quite a lot in the first meeting itself. But thankfully, the leaders within IPCC and that time the working group chair, Deborah, was very supportive, and she said, why don't you just give a very short presentation of why it is needed, because I think it's not about the scientist pushing you back, but just that they don't have they have lack of understanding of how and why they can incorporate. And then I took a session. This was going beyond the scheduled time, and then it was accepted. And then we looked into how we can look into cross-cutting issues, and thankfully that has been taken forward in the 6th assessment report where I was part. And then I also coordinated the gender and climate change subgroup, which has produced a very interesting cross-chapter box on gender, which was looking at the issues. Now, coming to your specific questions in terms of how do we look at the examples of successful policies? I'll give you 4 examples. The first is about women's participation in renewable energy, and we see that the policies, and especially looking from India, they have prioritized training and employment opportunity for women in the renewable sector, simultaneously addressing gender equality and climate change. Now, programs that provide technical trainings in solar panel installation or wind turbine maintenance can actually empower women economically, and also promoting the adaptation of clean energy technology. So that's number one. The second is about land rights and sustainable agriculture. Now, we have been putting this in our IPCC report also, that the literature shows that where women have secure land rights, they tend to invest more in sustainable farming practices such as agroforestry, soil conservation, and also that can help mitigate climate change. Also, if you see the male migration which is happening, I always say the women are doing three shifts, and they get up as early as 4 o'clock in the morning and then sleep very late in the night. The less time for them. So this part has to be looked into, and there are some policy which has been brought in, which has helped. Third is about access to clean cooking technology. You've seen how India's program also has there. And the fourth is about gender responsible disaster risk reduction, where we have seen certain policy shift which is happening. Yeah. So over to you, the Barchana, if you have any further questions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Actually, sir, I'm doing a systematic literature review on the gender issues, women as an agent of change, rather. So, all or most of the literatures are talking about the vulnerabilities, about the risk, about the how women are actually coping up with these strategies. But little literatures have been found as a woman as a agency of change, as a leader. They are doing. So that's why my question, I put it over to you.
Yeah.
I'll suggest that you look at the sixth assessment report, where
Yes.
we have a special cross-chapter box on gender, and the references will give you a lot more things. You can always get back to me. And thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So let me just add to what Rebecca really raised an point that it is difficult to find women change makers. And also a point where we were discussing Anjal, Vishal, and even Chandra, who are really suggesting for male panelists to include women. Actually, we are developing a repository of women change makers in the water sector. In fact, Wiki Water Resource Council is all about that. And we now have, as a council, nearly touching 198 members. So you are also invited to join the council. But in there, we have a good repository of women from across India, where you can find what exemplary work these women are doing. Now it's a matter of, just picking them up or just reaching out to us and asking for, would you like to do this work or collaborate or find them out? I mean, I think it's a first of its kind to have this kind of compilation, and we are coming up with a compendium on that. So I think later on, we can just gift it to all government organizations and corporates. So next time you are discussing about it, you are looking for women change makers.
Yes.
Because often the change makers who have been documented are also from the grassroots. And this is, I think, a unique one where women professionals from urban especially and who are trained in water sector are compiled together. So do check out for our work there. And let me just bring the question what Sumit had raised, and he's extending the discussion to more feminism. And I think we can also go beyond that and talk about it's actually not about being woman or man in the water sector. It is about how the approach is, whether it is masculine. And even I've been talking about it a lot. The water management has been masculine approach, and it's not about men and women. And we need more eco-feministic approach. So Vishal, would you like to take this question, and maybe Anjal also chip in, and then we take last question from Jayati. Over to you, Vishal.
All right. So I also see a question directed to me. Can I take that first? Yeah. It says,
yes, whatever. Yeah, I was coming to that later. Yeah.
How can we implement effective strategies to increase the representation of women in leadership roles? Okay, so I'm not sure if there's a formula for this. I mean, I don't think that there is a blueprint. And in many ways, we've spoken about this also in today's discussion. But I think one could argue that in the long run, in the long run, factors that succeed in, or policies that succeed in altering the balance of power between men and women, right, will create more space for women leadership to come up. Yeah, and the reason I'm saying this is that very often, we think that reserving seats for women, for instance, is one way to improve their representation leadership roles. But even when formal seats are reserved for them, patriarchal structures keep them, confined in their existing roles. Yeah. But having said that, I'll go back to what Mansi was saying, that there are possibly far more women leaders already, on the ground doing important roles in water that we are not aware of, maybe, right? So they may not be they may not be outcomes of conscious policies or products to create women leadership, but they may have been active on their own, in their own capacity. So I think it's also important to make those women leaders, their work and contribution more visible, right? And when I say this, I mean not just women from the socially elite sections of society, but from very diverse sections of the society. So I think that's what I would say. Now, coming back to Sumit's point, I mean, if there were a if there were a radically transformative way to tackle this, then it would have worked by now. I don't know. I mean, so I don't know. I'm not sure what this radically transformative way is going to be. So for me, it's still about making whatever change we can in our capacities wherever we are, and then accepting that all societal change is incremental. That when we talk of public policy, we talk about incrementalism. We say that change happens in increments and in small steps and moves. So I know many feminists are very disappointed with the pace of change, but if there were a more powerful alternative that would work, then it would have worked by now. I mean, and I think that we should continue to do whatever we can in moving towards this.
Let me just add
please,
here.
go ahead.
Sumit has asked a question, and that's typical of Sumit anyway. So, knowing him for a long time, one can understand. But this is seriously, the way in which we are looking at the criticality of the gender equality issues and what, in the spectrum, where are you standing yourself? And I would actually like to go forward and say that there is definitely there's a critical literature which is available, and we do all refer to it. But my task actually is to Indianize, at least to look at it from Western, non-Western perspective. The way in which we are looking at gender issues in our societies are very different from what we see it, especially literature which is coming from the Western so-called white women kind of understanding, because the lived-in experience are very different, and the way we conceptualize gender is also very different. So definitely there's a dearth of, as Debarchana also said, there's a dearth of literature coming out from the Indian or the South Asian or global South perspective on gender, which is different from the global North lived-in experience perspective. I think that point we need to go further. Sumit, we need to have more discussion and time for this one, but just a very quick rebut to you all. Over to you, Mansi.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks a lot. And I see Surbhi has put up another small question there. Maybe we take it quickly. And I think the question is asked to not really
to
specific,
everyone,
but maybe to everyone. Maybe I invite Chandra to respond to this question. How can we, and you have already said that, actually all three of them have said that, how can we as individuals within the system challenge and change these attitudes? And I think this has been discussed at length by all our panelists, but still, Chandra, you have been radically doing it, and I saw Vishal using the word, if there are radical ways to change, we may actually bring that change. Actually, we need more change makers, whether it is male or female. Would you like to add any points here as your last remark?
I would rather say it's in the mind of the woman. I think why is she thinking that the bias is happening in the academia or in the industry? In fact, my sister, I told you, the first female BE graduate in her thing. Actually, those days it was the 5-year BE. Okay, after first year, they are supposed to change to the specific subject, electronics or civil. So there were only 4 colleges in the state that time. Okay, so she was going to the principal. Remember, she was already married at the age of 18 to my uncle because of the family bonding and stuff like that, promise what a dying father had taken from daughter and sort of thing. She was married by merit. All the other in-laws, all the sister-in-laws were all not allowing her to go to educating. In fact, my grandfather was a teacher. He stood fast and he was telling, okay, let her decide whether she wants to go or she wants to be in the married life. She took a call. Yes, I have got by merit. I want to go and continue engineering. So it is the woman who decides, not the academia or the male member. Nobody are stopping you. Okay. After going there, again there was a challenge. All were men. The men hostel were made for men because they have never seen a woman entering into the engineering college. She told the principal, why do you bother? When they all are like brothers to me, I can just take a room, just change my shirt for my mechanical workshop and keep going. What is your problem? Again, she broke the barrier. The second year, surprisingly, she took the motherhood. She said, I will run the hostel for the second year girls who have joined fresh. Okay, she became a warden at such a young age. She told the principal to hire a house, created a hostel for the women who had joined in the second year, subsequent year, because 2 or 3 more girls have joined by then. So it is the women who takes the call and decides all this paradigm shift and stuff like that. I don't blame the men. or the academia or the system saying that you are a woman, so you be this way or that way. I think the women can do the change and they can bring the change. When it has happened some 20, 30 years ago, why you still keep talking about men doing this and men? We are nowhere in between you. You grow the way you want to grow and proliferate the way you want to be successful. We are there to only support you. Because
Mansi, can I just
in the women,
Yeah,
only
I
part
can.
of that are men
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
We want
Mansi,
to
can I
move
just
you and
quickly
make you a
respond
better
to
Yeah,
woman.
yeah,
Sure, sure, sure.
Survi's
yeah,
question?
Anjan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anjan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Anjal, go ahead.
So no, I mean, Surbi, very good question. I think there's a
Yes,
point that Vishal has also talked about earlier. There could be reverse discrimination, and this is
yes,
the question is actually pointing it out towards something which may be brewing. It may not be coming, and now it's not politically correct for anybody to say openly about gender issues and all that or against gender issues, and that's why it's a latent thing. What I would actually do is to create an ally first, and so you have within the academic institution you have people who are have a similar understanding of yours, and then create that kind of pressure group, and then also engage with these people, and make them understand, have an open dialogue and conversation
yes.
that will lead to some place, because that's most of the time what happens. They think that it's a privileged position women also bring in sometime because of the other issues that they have. Over to you. I'm sorry, time is short,
No,
so I'm
no
just
issues.
cutting it short.
Yes. No, I think conversations make things very, very convenient to move on, because some things are not seen at all, are taken for granted or normalized or internalized because of our cultural heritage, which we carry through patriarchy. So conversations makes it much more convenient, because everybody will understand if we can just bring forth the situation. I take quickly Sumit's point, because I see his hand is raised, and then Anamika, over to you to really have your last remark for the session. Sumit.
Thank you, Mansi, for giving the opportunity. I just wanted to mention one small point. I completely agree with Anjal, what he mentioned about the literature that is emerging in the, I will not use the word global north, but in European and American, or particularly North American academia. And the gender issues in South Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa are completely different. So I completely agree with you, Anjal, on that point. However, there is a pushback also from the academic system I'm part of, simply because they think the pace of doing things, especially around gender, are very slow. And they are also completely politicized. Different agendas, of course, and that's why I was thinking to raise this particular question and find out a way out to bridge this gap between the Western and the Indian, or more global South, if
I
we say that.
I think you must, organize another W for
I was
Yeah.
W.
about to say this, Anjal. Maybe why not,
I'll
Sumit? We
love to
have the
come back.
follow-up session on this very aspect itself. So, I mean, that will be a very good way to really elaborate on this point. And now we have a next special session already, I think, initiated by Sumit. Probably you are already now empowered to organize this session. All help from
I'm
our
not a
end.
gender expert, I must say that. I'm not a gender expert.
You
So
can
maybe I'm
organize
not the right
speakers
person,
for
but we
us.
can organize something. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much.
Mansi, just
Yeah.
one small point more.
Sure.
There was a question on what are the possible radical transformative ideas. Yeah, there are few, but I again think, and going back to the discussants' arguments, that may not work in the context we are talking about right now. So yeah, I'll
Or may work, or
keep
may
it
work.
short.
One has to try, or may work. You never know.
Oh,
And
we have tried.
In Dutch, there is
Oh,
a
we have
saying. You are
tried.
living in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, there is a saying: unless you try, you never know it was there for you. So
I
it's a very
agree,
famous
but
saying. So
it's in the
let's
context of
try
the
it out.
Netherlands. Yes,
Yes.
sure.
So
All
we
right.
have to try. Thank you so much,
Okay.
and over to
So
you,
Okay.
much.
Anamika, for your last
Yeah.
words of the session.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, very quick last word, because we are already over time. So thank you to
Yeah.
all the panelists. It was an excellent conversation. Like Mansi said, we need to have a part two. We will keep that in mind to have a part two of this, because we need to have many more of you so that we can fight for the cause together. I again would go back to what I started by saying. Yes, women are already breaking barriers, but it is not only women's responsibility to break barriers, which is also difficult because in a patriarchal world. So when we put the responsibility on Survi to break the barriers, I think that is not fair. So we need to make sure that we also provide an environment for students like Survi who are also a product of patriarchy, and it takes a lot of time to understand what is going on. I think what is very, very important, and sometimes it makes me very sad too. Even the generation which we see here in IIT, for example, is a very, very male-dominated institution. Even they are kind of following this route. How can we stop that from happening? That's the biggest question, and I think that's where we need to engage young male or boys as male champions along with male champions. So I would really like people like Anjal, Chandra, Vishal to also groom another generation of students or boys who can help students like Survi to break these barriers. So with these few points, thank you very much. And I think we all had a very excellent conversation and we will continue this conversation. Thank you. So over to you, Mansi.
Thank you so much, Anamika. And first of all, thanks for bringing out this whole idea of organizing this special session. I think that's important. And let us not get this idea that because we have these four gentlemen who are already engaging in this gender aspect of life, right from personal to the political space, means that we are very close to engendering the society. No, not really. We are privileged to know these male leaders who are they're doing their bit to engender the society, and that's where we have more responsibility as a collective to work towards it, because even by and large the society still holds with gender as a patriarchal problem. I mean, and we are still on the receiving end as women. So having said that, many people have come out of it as women and men both, and by their own virtues, as rightly mentioned by Chandra also, that you have to do your bit as well, but also taking the clue from students and youth. Yes, workspaces are still highly patriarchal, and that is where people like all of us have to work together. Already you gave an idea to have another session, and when you were speaking, Anamika, I thought of already the third session where we can talk about more younger people coming on board and discussing on it. So youth and gender can itself be another special session between us. So from W4W Foundation, that is it for today. And we are taking a rest for 3 months because we had a huge water festival. And that 3 months is coming to an end, and we are super excited. We are already organizing our speakers for our season 4 to start our sessions post 250. So we are 255 sessions today. So we are super excited, also nervous, by the way, to go through the whole grill of organizing more sessions and sessions. But definitely water conversations are extremely crucial for water conservation. And that's the fundamental line which we are using at W4W Foundation to bring all of you together. Because unless and until we talk about it, we cannot make water everybody's business. And similarly, unless and until we talk about women in water, unless and until we talk about gender in water, we will not be able to engender the water sector, but also society at large. So thank you, all the participants who have made this conversation possible, all the speakers, Vishal, Anjal, Chandra, and Sanjay ji, whom I've been knowing for quite some time now, for their exemplary work to accept our invitation and make this conversation extremely useful for us. We will come back with an essay out of it, hopefully in some time. So please take care, and please keep checking our website and social media to see what's coming up in May and June from our end. Thank you so much. Take care.